local people. Local news and events. Local sports. Local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Welcome into the new Lloydminster Nissan, now located on Highway 17 South. Finance a new vehicle with the new Lloydminster Nissan this November and get $1,000 cash back. And you can use that cash however you see fit. Christmas is just around the corner, so if you want to use it for Christmas presents or catching up on bills, you can do that as well. And winter tires are at cost here at the new Lloydminster Nissan. Stop in and see us today on Highway 17 South. Well, 3 more prospective City Council candidates joining us this morning to wrap up our time with council members in our series. Russell Moncrieff, Barry Helm, and Michele Charles Gustafson will give us their thoughts on the city this morning. Superior Water specializes in nothing but water, and with over 22 years in the business, they're proud and confident that their water and their service is superior. For iron filters, water softeners, reverse osmosis distillers, chlorine removal, and H2S odor removal, give Superior Water a call today at 780-875-6630. Or stop in and see them on their 57th Avenue location right beside Sheepskin Loft, and stay hydrated with pure, clean water. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste, and it is Superior Water. Well, just a couple of notes here this morning. One, the Chase the Ace draw tonight at the exhibition, that's already well over $95,000. It's probably over $96,000. It's probably gone up in the last hour. Tickets start at just $10 each, and we're talking about life-changing money now when it's getting close to $100,000. For $10, you can get in on it. 3 tickets for $25, 8 for $50, or 20 tickets for $100. 22 cards left in the deck, and one of them, of course, the Ace of Hearts. Purchase your Lloyd X Chase the Ace tickets at lloydx.com, and you can get e-transfer details there as well. And you can also purchase them in person. And many people will be headed out to the Lloydminster exhibition tonight, because tonight is Feastival, a farm-to-plate supper with locally sourced food. Tickets are available at lloydx.com, and you can sample some great food and enjoy some fellowship. Check out the menu at lloydx.com. I did this morning. I'm going to be serving tonight. It's a night that I always look forward to, and they have everything from Yorkshire pudding and roast beef, oh, Yorkshire pudding, to chicken pizza, to cheesecake with haskak and blueberries. So it is going to be a nice night tonight at the Lloydminster Exhibition. Feastival is always great. It's such a wonderful thing to see some locally sourced food. And while we have Feastival tonight, we have Festivus tomorrow, because Jonathan Torreson is going to be joining us tomorrow. He's been listening to the interviews that we've been doing. He's been listening to the Sean Newman podcast. He's been checking out the newspaper, and he's been finding information about our candidates wherever they can. And he's going to come in and give us his take on some of what's been said, some of what he told me yesterday. He said, "Kurt, you said some stuff that's not true, so I got to correct you." Wouldn't tell me what I've said, but I'm looking forward to that as well. And he said, I've got to make some corrections, and people need to know where we stand. So that's going to be interesting tomorrow. A no-holds-barred Festivus, an early Festivus with former City Councilman Jonathan Torreson. BioClean Disaster Services is committed, certified, reliable, and will help you get your life back. BioClean Disaster Services at 1-833-246-8326. When fire, flood, disaster hits your family, that's when you call a local restoration company. And not only are they local, they're Lloydminster's largest restoration company. 1-833-246-8326, because taking care of your property and your belongings is so important, but what really matters is getting your family and that family dynamic back to where you were before the disaster. Well, we are excited to have Russell Moncrieff with us this morning, and of course Barry Helm and Michele Charles Gustafson will join us in just a bit as well. So Russell, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I think he just wants to get out of doing dishes.
Yeah, I don't think I do have to do dishes at all today. I think Heather's away, so I'll be eating out for lunch. Let's put it that way. So, and then, yeah, Feastable
Definitely a
tonight.
compromise, definitely a compromise.
So let's get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to put your name forward for city council?
Oh, for sure. Like, I did have some notes here, and I'm going to try and not use them too often because we want to keep it as personal and impromptu as possible. I'm a local raised person. I started my life out in Marshall, Saskatchewan, 1959, truly on the wrong side of the tracks. There was, not the wrong side, but the south side, which had no running water. And it was uphill to school, but, you know, my grandfather was a janitor, and that was cool. But, you know, so you had small community stuff. I mean, I was raised in that environment when everything was, you know, simpler, much simpler. We had, you know, party line telephones and local burning barrels, of which my father and myself were the handymen around the town hauling the garbage out on whatever days of the week it was. But then as you grow up, I was educated out there till grade 9, and then we had to go into the comprehensive, bussed in from town every day, much to the dismay of the bus driver probably. But here we are, educated in Lloydminster till high school completion. And I managed to get involved in the automotive industry with a local dealership at the time, RJR Noise Limited, and learned a lot about mechanics. I've always been a mechanic because I grew up beside a scrap iron yard. Fixing things and dealing with broken stuff is just the way of being back then. But, you know, along comes an opportunity to join the oil industry, as everyone knows. You're a young man and you get lured by the big dollars. So I got a substantial increase to go join with Husky Oil back then, and started out with a shovel. So when I say I'm a blue-collar tradesman guy, yeah, I worked hard. It was, the weather doesn't relent here in the prairies, and you did what you were told, when you were told, and how you were told to do it. But I quickly progressed into the shift work side of things and learned the whole oil process from, you know, making roofing tar all the way up to, I was actually involved as a senior plant operator when they commissioned the newer refinery here in town, when the old one was still driven by steam. That really dates me, doesn't it? But yeah, so as an operator, commissioning the facility, and then you know, night shift gives you opportunities if you take them. And I started getting curious about electricity, and the new plant was controlled with this new 600-volt three-phase system. It intrigued me, and I shifted my perspective a little bit from mechanical towards electrical. And I wound up doing an apprenticeship on my own for a bit externally, and then an opportunity opened up, and I became an apprentice and finished my apprenticeship with Husky Energy. So here I am now as a technically trained electrician. Long term, I spent 35 years with Husky Energy, and they're a great company. They still are, no matter what the name is. They've done a lot for me personally and for the community. Time moves on, and seen an opportunity to have early retirement with a medical thing. I had some sore feet, broken feet actually. So I had to get a little bit of corrective surgery, and it was determined that, hey, you know, you're probably ready for early retirement. So check it out early, but I'm still not ready to quit. I went and got my master's certificate in electrical so I could run my own business, and then wound up taking on a job with an engineering firm as a senior electrical designer, which branched into the great COVID years. Wound up losing my job, and that's cool because you do what you have to get creative. And I wound up wearing the orange apron out at Home Depot, and I loved the job. You know, interacting with the people was great, but you know, things.
That's a little hard on the feet too.
Oh yeah, it was difficult, and things opened up again, and I wound up going back to work with the same company, engineering firm, and as a field service technician for medium voltage gear and stuff. It's a very high risk sometimes, or high consequences, low risk because we're protected, right? But then along comes 65. And the government really doesn't like you working past 65, at least from a worker's perspective. You know, if you get injured and you're 65, all you got is pension. And if you get killed, well, your wife gets half of your income or your policy, right? So it's like kind of forced into retirement again. But this thing's still working, you know, so let's find something else to do. And giving back from my experience into the city of Lloyd, I think I'm going to make a good counselor if I get in there because I've got a pretty vast array of background knowledge.
How can council foster economic growth? Where do you see areas of success? And what would you do to attract more diverse businesses to our community?
I got to look at a few of my notes.
Okay.
Well, I heard this big business. I didn't understand this fully, but big business does a lot of the heavy lifting as tax burden. So they get taxed at a different rate than residential, than the Joe citizens, right? And right now, we've had a couple of long-term major heavy lifters, you know, Husky being one of them, Sonomas, and, you know, some of the bigger industries in this community. But there doesn't seem to be enough of it to lift a larger portion of that burden. So we wind up with this thing of making sure that our community is attractable to these larger industries longer term, maybe offering them a partial, limited deal to get them here and get them going is something that we should be looking at.
You know, that's interesting because I was reminiscing yesterday about civic election when Ken Baker was running for mayor. And he had mentioned, we were at Lakeland College, and he had mentioned Costco was interested in coming, but they wanted the land for free. And there was a noticeable gasp from the audience. It seems like things have changed a little bit, and the community would be open to doing things like that. Do you see it going that far? Or?
Well, yeah, that's the Costco carrot dangling that we've heard about, everyone's heard about. Oh, they're coming this year. And, you know, if the land is there and it's not being utilized at all, but it's there and waiting, the infrastructure's in the ground, apparently in some places, both Saskatchewan side, or I should say Saskatchewan side and Alberta side, why aren't we giving them that kind of deal? If they do bring that kind of revenue and perform the heavy lifting for us down the road, it's like a startup home, but in this case, it's a startup business, a big one.
Homelessness. That was listed by Colleen Young when she was here as the number one thing she heard on doorsteps when she was out knocking on doors for the provincial election. People are worried about it. What recommendations would you make to help solve the homelessness issue?
Oh my, it's got to go past the visual perception that these are nothing but trouble. These are people that just don't have a home. And it's balled in there with some other almost beliefs that every homeless person is a problem. I didn't see that from the few, I only get to talk to a few of them. I didn't hear that from them. They just don't have a home. And, you know, we've tried to do our best as people to accommodate a transition in life. I mean, if any one person here was to lose their job, they would probably find themselves in jeopardy in a pretty neat order. What do they deserve? You know, you're going to call them criminals right away? No. I mean, I've had to go back and live on medical EI when I was recovering from my foot surgeries and knee surgeries. And boy, you've got to do some radical adjustments to what you think is a want versus a need. Some of these people need mental help. Some of them need addictions help. Some of them just need a place to get a restart. And we have to be careful, I think, where we allow that to happen. Because I know there's some situations out there, I've heard of them, witnessed them through friends, that sometimes people are put in the wrong area just as a restart. If you take a person who's still suffering from active addictions, I should say, and you put them in a senior living facility as a temporary stopgap, that's not fair to the residents that live there, and I don't think it's really where the public wants to go. So we're still lacking facilities for placing these people somewhere where they can be safe and the people around them can feel safe, the community at large.
So facilities would be?
It is. I mean, and I did tour the men's shelter there just recently to see what's going on there, and it has cleaned up substantially. Because now their new policy, right, is like you're not coming in the door if you're an active addiction thing. You have to be working towards it. You got a definite time frame to get it together and try and change your life. Because the people have to want it too. It can't just be a forever thing.
Along with homelessness, crime is a huge concern for all residents right across both provinces. How do you think council can develop and maintain a safe and viable community for all?
Well, we did hear, I was there, the Cops for Coffee, and then I followed through with a little kind of an impromptu with Jerry Nutbrown. I believe he's one of the major people in that organization, the RCMP. They are ramping things up. And, this didn't happen overnight. We're hearing people saying, this wasn't like this 5 years ago. That's right, it probably wasn't. And 5 years from now, what's it going to be like? They are trying to wrap it up, and they are trying to remove the criminal element from what's perceived as an entire homeless issue. It's a criminal issue. There are some criminal people that are on the streets. That's never going to change, but you try to curtail it. And there's some costs to that. And unfortunately, since Lloydminster, we moved a RCMP facility to the Alberta side, Saskatchewan kind of dropped their hands on that one, says, well, it's Alberta's problem now. And from what I'm understanding, the Saskatchewan government doesn't really fund as much, if hardly anything, of the policing of Lloydminster now that there's no police barracks on the Saskatchewan side. This needs that meshing between the two provinces to figure out, Lloydminster is a kind of very unique entity, and everyone has to chip in. Both these governments got to get intermeshed and start picking up their share of the heavy lifting again, that buzzword, right?
So more cops, more sharing of the burden?
Share the load. I mean, this is a border city. The crime doesn't stop at Saskatchewan border at the 4th Meridian, right?
Well, healthcare is a provincial responsibility. What role do you see council playing in order to ensure residents are getting the best care possible, as close to home as possible?
Well, that's a huge issue, because once again, it comes down to some provincial levels for sure. I mean, Saskatchewan side, the one facility for long-term care really comes into the highlight because it hasn't changed. The number of beds hasn't changed since 1958. I sat in with that Concerned Senior Citizens Care Society. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And Colleen Young was there, as well as Garth Roswell and the other, I lost his name, but the Alberta equivalent. And it became a little bit of a finger-pointing issue. But the graph doesn't lie. I mean, it's a flat line from 1958 through to 2024. There's still only 50 beds on the Saskatchewan side. Alberta's got close to 160 or 180 or something. I know they're ramping it up.
Like mental health beds, you mean?
Long-term.
Long-term, okay,
Long-term,
okay.
Healthcare, sorry. And the hospital, it's an aging facility. This is something that definitely needs to be brought forefront. And I believe through more groups like that, Lloydminster Senior Citizens, they're presenting papers to the government directly themselves, under the careful guidance of some of the people that are running that program, that group. That's a squeakier wheel than one councillor or 6 councillors that keep picking on the MLAs, right? They're there to help us. We got to learn to work together, and that's a communications thing.
Many user groups, so the BioClean Aquatics Centre, wish they had more accessibility to pool time and increased lanes, and the length of the lanes has become an issue as well. We have a temporary museum right now. We've moved the library to the Lloyd Mall, and a new event centre is set to open in 2025. So what do you see as the next major recreational facility needed for our community, and can we pay for that without raising taxes?
Here we go with the needs versus the wants, and how did we get here? There is other communities in other parts of the country that have tackled a similar process. The one that really caught my attention was out in Nova Scotia, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. They had some of their, from what I've seen, the Mariner Centre got a huge expansion, and it was, most of the brunt apparently was carried by the bigger industries. They have larger budgets than a lot of them really put forward. That they could be picking up a big portion of a facility, especially if we go ahead and, like we've done here, we've named it the Synovus Hub. It's quite a pride thing to say this is Lloydminster's and these are the people. We're behind them for doing that. So bring the heavy lifters on board, lift that burden off the end user. Is the aquatic center viable? Yeah, for sure. They don't make money typically because it's a huge expense to operate a pool. The outdoor pool is very aged. I still use it, definitely not now, but it's something that maybe they could be combined. Let's not cripple the existing pool while we build a new one. Why not expand into the Archie Miller area with a new indoor pool down there, as it's affordable, get some heavy lifters in to help finance it, and combine those facilities. It's a beautiful little park. It's already got an outdoor.
So similar to what they're doing at the Synovus Hub, where they have an $8 million quest to reach locally for investors. Like $5 million was kicked off by Synovus, but now they have that chart down
Yeah,
at City
saw
Hall
that.
where it's like I think it's at 3.8 or something like that right now. Similar to that. Is that what you mean?
Well, and I know that.
And the Synovus Hub, or the Service Sports Center, that was raised with a group of citizens went out, raised $1 million, and then went to City Hall and said, hey, we've got this $1 million, we're ready to get serious about, building a new arena.
But maybe we have to have more of the money up front before we really commit to a huge debt load. I mean, we're getting pretty heavily debt laden as a city entity. And this is something that could become dangerous for our long-term prosperity, is to get too deep in debt. And that's all we're doing is servicing our debt load.
Many user groups of the BioClean. Oh, I did that one, sorry. Do you believe the City of Lloydminster Mayor and Council is transparent? What would you do to make them more transparent?
Oh, here I have to say something very important. I want to correct a previous public comment. When I had someone suggest that you've got to get an audit done,
A forensic audit.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the term. And don't get me wrong here, I am not insinuating that there's any misgivings or misdoings with the present council. I didn't understand the terminology, and I was looking at it from a snapshot point of view as here's where we are now, and this is how we got here. I mean, and so now we have a benchmark to say, keep an eye on your budget, council and the city, because we know where you started from, we know where you left off previously. So my apologies to anyone if I offended by an incorrect remark. It wasn't intended that way.
So you're saying now you don't want a forensic audit?
Well, I didn't understand the term. An audit, apparently though, there's like 4 or 5 different kinds of audits. I was audited once on my small business by the government, and they don't mess around. But that's not what I was saying. I'm just looking for a snapshot. Where are we? So we have a benchmark. And I don't think you get that with just your regular budget presentation of this is what they asked for versus what we're going to spend. What did we spend? Where did it go? Just as a good overall snapshot.
So you like to see the kind of the books from like years ago to kind of like a timeline of how we got?
Not even so much years ago, as where are we? Like I sat through the budget presentation right on site. It was 8 hours and it was very detailed. And my little red pen was just going crazy on hey, look at this. Here's something to circle to talk about. If I'm one of the people that's in there that has to vote on this, I want to know what I'm actually agreeing to. And so the percentage of where we allot money to, and I think there were some errors made there in previous interviews that, here's how much support goes to one particular organization or facility that we publicly fund. That one being Border Paws, I think it was. The number sticks out in my head that I saw 400,000 and they're only getting 80,000, and I think the
That was
numbers.
250, but I
know,
could be
but
wrong.
that's not what is in my paper printout. So was that valid? That's just a proposal. This is what we think we should do. The tough job is for the new council, whoever they are, to make sure that that is actually where we can afford to be.
Okay. Do you believe that decisions are made based on the information and recommendations provided by city administration, or do you believe influence from outside parties influence decision-making at the council level?
Okay, this is one crucial area that I had pointed out to me that I think sometimes it's not exactly the way it should operate as far as an improvement. It says council's purpose is to be the what gets done, and administration's purpose is how they do that. And obviously we have to mesh together to say, listen, this is what in admin brings these recommendations. They do the surveys, they have all the information at their disposal. Council gets presented that and says, is it a good idea? Council has to be an open ear to the public and saying, listen, if there's a large turnout of people that says, why did you do that? They're put on the hot seat, literally. And if they don't fully understand it, or they're just voting because, admin said it was a good idea, or it was brought forward by them, that's the thing. Council is the what gets done according to the public's will, and that MN makes it happen. And we've got to make sure that those boundaries don't get too blurred to become too strict either. It's a balancing act.
So like, for example, when the men's shelter was going to expand, there was a group of people went to City Hall, so this is not the way we do things. That's what you're kind of referring to, right? We got to listen to the public.
Well, on the men's shelter, that's because it's a multifaceted problem there. There is some funding from the provincial governments, from what I understand. Lloyd it's also semi-private. I don't fully understand the how that got where it is and how it became a problem. I think they started to take on too much burden. It wasn't just a men's shelter anymore. It became like a feeding center and a place to hang out while you're waiting.
Do you believe the city should invest in public transportation? Why or why not?
Okay, I don't even need to look at my notes on this one because I'm a senior. I get subsidized taxi coupons. I haven't used any of them yet, but they're there. And so this idea of the pilot project, the study was done. I seen a report. It was 115 pages, read through it. There was 4 different types of services they could provide. There was a cost attached to it. And which one the public said they picked, but there wasn't that much feedback from the public, really. I think my numbers, I might have to look. There was lots of information was gathered by what do we call them? Some survey company, engineering study.
I remember taking that survey online.
The Watt survey, I think it was, yeah. No, that was just this input.
Oh,
then it
okay.
went back to an engineering firm who did a cost analysis study, and they come up with a plan and said, the public only wants to pay $2 a ride. Our operating cost is going to be like $3 to $3.50. So we know that it's a public service, and it's going to cost us money. Who's going to foot the bill? Well, in this case, it's going to be the taxpayers and all the tax base, whether that be a sponsorship or some blended in between. Why could we not look further at that and say, if it's a pilot project, I heard Michael even refer to that, saying, rent the equipment. Have a contract for one of the major players like Edmonton, come out and run a pilot project for us with 2 buses in this format that we were told was a good idea, and see if it works. Or subsidize the students. There's always a workaround for what you can afford versus what you really want or need. There are people that cannot get around without public transportation, and if they're at the mercy, and they're getting taken to the cleaners. But if all there is a taxi, there is no alternative. So a busing or a semi-busing blended with subsidized taxis, there's always a will and a way to work with things.
Sounds like you are in favor of trying something.
Oh, I am in favor
Yeah.
of trying something because I have people that are disabled that have to wait for the handy van to show up, and it's not always on your time frame. So it's something we definitely need to look at.
Thanks, Russell.
Okay.
Appreciate the time. We'll take a break, and when we come back, Barry Helm will join us today.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back, you help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Jason Arden & Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs And we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to give back to the communities that we live in. Thanks to the support of our clients in Lloydminster and area, in 2023, Jason Arden and Associates has donated $40,000 to local nonprofits, charities, students, athletes, and other special events. How does your insurance company support our community?
It's more than just taxes at LNA CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at LNA CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. LNA CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Welcome back inside the new Lloydminster Nissan. Our next guest is Barry Helm. And Barry, of course, is one of the 14 council members that are looking for a seat. There are 6 that will be up for grabs 1 week from today. Barry, thanks for coming in.
I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. So,
tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself, why you decided to run for city council.
well, that's probably one of the hardest questions for me to answer, because I have to admit, like if I were to draw a little pie chart, there's a little part of me that's doing it out of ego, right? Just to be very, very honest. It's like just to be seen as an important person, to maybe some sort of deep insecurity about creating some sort of significance. That's a very small piece of who I am, and I just want to admit that. But those are like little weeds in who I am that I just need to pluck out. The real reason is that I just want to make a better city. And not that the city is bad now, but just to make a better city. So some of you in the audience may, and you yourself may know me. I'm a local boy, not a boy, but I'm a local man. It doesn't feel like I'm a man, but
at one point you were a local boy.
At one point I was a local boy, yes, causing trouble. And I've got 2 businesses in town, Pioneer Landscaping and Squeegee Boy, and I started those back in 1999. And they've been great. This community has been great to me, and so many people have helped me get my start in this. And like I've said at the forum, if some of you took that in, I've been down, probably driven down every city street, and I love this community. I want it to be better and get better and continue getting better. So.
When I went to radio school, I think it was on the first day. It was TV and radio together, and one of the instructors was a guy named Dave Albright, and he said to us, how many of you are here today and you want to be on television or on the radio because you want to be famous? And nobody put their hand up, and he was like, you're all liars, he said. How can council foster economic growth? Where do you see areas of success, and what would you do to attract more diverse businesses to our community?
That's a great question. I think that there's been so many success stories in Lloydminster that are probably even unspoken stories. This new facility, for example, and we see new growth with the new co-op station at the 12th Street now. So there are a lot of good things that are happening and have happened in the city. In terms of fostering that growth, I think we have a remarkable team in community startup, on city, employed by the city, who are doing a wonderful job of working on economic development. Where do I see the ability to grow? I think as a council member, just to encourage those, to give those people wings to do their job appropriately, to energize them, and ultimately, and I talked about this before, is to create a vision for this community that people can gather around and become excited about and want to set down roots in this community as I have. So,
homelessness is listed as one of our biggest concerns. What recommendations would you make to help solve the issue?
I don't want to defer council's role and ability to help in that area, but again, there are so many people doing so many good things for this community. I've seen the men's shelter just respond to some of the comments and feedback that they've had recently, and that building now has turned around. And I know that in that study it said that it was the biggest concern, and I think we have to be aware that that was kind of a point in time concern. I think if you were to ask that question now, seeing the positive changes that have taken place, I'm not sure that that would tick as high as it has, because the community spoke and people responded. And I think that's such a great thing for us to be able to do. And again, I think of organizations like the Olive Tree, like I said, Kagan at the men's shelter, doing remarkable work. And I think, again, we need just to empower those people, give them the tools. I think we are, as a community, going to have to make some very difficult decisions in the next, and as council, in the next few weeks as the weather gets colder. Having a warming shelter, for example. And I think that's going to become something critical. And I know that we can say, well, that's not in our jurisdiction, but these are our people. They're people in our community, and we need to be available to help them out.
So along with homelessness, crime is a huge concern for all residents right across both Alberta and Saskatchewan. How do you think council can develop and maintain a safe and viable community for everyone?
I think almost every person that you had up here mentioned about getting our fair share from the Saskatchewan government in terms of policing and whatnot. I think we've got a great police force in this town. People know more about it than I do. City bylaw, I think they've done a wonderful job. I've seen such a great improvement. I think, again, giving them the tools that they need and perhaps expanding a little bit on what they can do, are able to do. It's great. And I think supporting community groups, neighborhood watches, and, I've heard the phrase like taking back the city, and I don't mean that in the sense of a confrontational sort of way, but using those parks, promoting our parks, for example, having park parties or neighborhood block parties, which we're doing already, but to really feature those, to create that sense of community, to get kids using those parks again, and start that sense of community at a very, very young age with them, and then build that up. And I think out of that greater sense of community, that neighborliness, that's a huge component in terms of what we're doing. Beyond that, there are other things that when it comes to urban design and urban planning that the city can be doing in terms of lighting and walkability and pruning trees and brushes just to make lines of sight better. So there's both these more ethereal types of things, sense of community, to practical things like the sense of community. I think the DART committee for the downtown, they're doing a wonderful job, and I'm happy to see them there. And I think it's through those initiatives that we can build on that sense of safety. So,
well, healthcare is a provincial responsibility. What role do you see council playing in order to ensure residents are getting the best care possible, as close to home as possible?
It's interesting. I think being on here now towards the end of these interviews, it's like I could just say ditto to what so many other people have said, because they've covered the issues in terms of being advocates and whatnot. When I look back as a component of healthcare, I think one that sticks out to me is just low cost housing for seniors, especially on the Saskatchewan side. And I think both you and I and the audience knows about how it doesn't feel like, the Saskatchewan government really hasn't stepped up to what I believe they should in terms of making more beds available in our community. I'm not entirely sure why that is. But I think starting there, I think caring for the seniors, and I think that's a huge component of healthcare, and it does demonstrate how we care for our seniors, I think, is indicative of who we are and what our values are as a community. For there not to have been an increase in beds on the Saskatchewan side since the 80s, that's a little bit embarrassing for the province of Saskatchewan. And I don't mean to denigrate the province, but it really, really is. And I think they need to take a hard look within themselves as the Minister of Health and those provincial authorities, what really needs to happen. It also may mean getting a little bit more creative in terms of where we as a city do perhaps private-public partnerships in terms of building a facility. For example, I think in the province of Saskatchewan, we are allowed to build a private care home for up to 6 residents. And so that is something that we could potentially team up with some developers, the province of Saskatchewan, and start small. If we get 6 more beds done privately, that's more than a 10% increase in what's there already. And these little steps, and then perhaps the province will start taking more note. So rather than expecting them just to come here and do it, it's like, let's do some of those initiatives ourselves. There's other things too. I could go on at length about this, and I don't know what the time constraints of this forum are, but for example, the new hospital. Everyone wants a new hospital. I know there's not a whole lot of things the city can do, but perhaps availing land towards the dream, towards that vision, like those 2 ball diamonds that are south of the hospital. And just saying, hey, we can move these, and perhaps if you guys ever decide to do something, and hopefully it's in the very near future, we can make a healthcare campus where this just becomes part of this healthcare center on that site. So
It's interesting that you say if you build 6 beds, it would increase things by over 10%.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks to a volume, doesn't it?
It's wild,
like,
isn't it?
It really strikes you. Like
Yeah.
it's a neat, different way of looking at things. That's for sure. Many user groups of the BioClean Aquatic Center wish they had more accessibility to pool time and increased lanes and length. We are using a temporary space for our museum right now. We have moved the library to the Lloyd Mall, and a new event center is set to open in 2025. What do you see as the next major recreational facility needed for our community, and can we pay for this without increasing taxes?
There's so many questions embedded in that, and this is an exciting question for me to address, and it was wisely worded, I think, because it draws out a lot of the issues. With the museum, where it is now, and I think that space probably makes sense. And I see them doing such a great job of in doing different programs and inviting the community in and really engaging the community where it is. I remember, and you probably too, the Fuchs Wildlife Gallery. I can remember as a little kid with all the 2-headed cows and the 6-headed
Some were scary, some were not as scary.
And it's like, man, they should bring up that. I don't know where that exhibit is anymore, but probably in some landfill somewhere. But
I think part of it went to St. Walburg, I think, but I could be wrong.
It could be.
There's pieces out there.
So I think they're doing a great job. I don't know if that's the facility that we need to build right away. I think continuing on building the programming so that it is engaging the residents is important. I think as a museum that tells our story, I would encourage that group or the groups in charge to really tell not just the story of Lloydminster, but the development of the region, the First Nations and the other communities around, and how we shifted from an area that depended on river transport using the North Saskatchewan River to rail transport, and how that built the city. And it's like, well, where is that story being told? And incorporating that into the story of some of the nearby municipalities. So rather than being kind of this isolationist local, it's like, let's see ourselves as a region as we tell those stories. And also to invite, there's so many new to Lloydminster, new to Canada people in our community now. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. I almost tear up thinking about it. When I come out of the Ukrainian Catholic Church and I see a little group of Ukrainians speaking in their own language, being part of this community and finding community in that group. It's so heartwarming to see that they're calling this home. We're privileged to have them here. Or to see have you ever had anyone cry on your show?
Yes.
You have? Okay,
Yep.
well.
Including me.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think of the Filipino community and how they have just brightened up this city so much to see them having their celebrations in the park and whatnot. And so when we talk about the museum and the history of the city, to remind them that they are part of this story, that this city, our history, is also their history as well. So that's very important. Moving on to the library, I think having it in the mall now is a great spot for it. And I think there's huge advantages to having it there. And I think most of the users love having it there. And it's central and it's close to Hearthstone.
Yep.
Yep, Hamstock. and it's close to a number of schools in the area. It's accessible, it's well lit, there's security there, and I think that's a wonderful spot for it. And I think it would be a difficult decision to take it out of that spot. And maybe it just becomes a satellite to a larger library. I'm not sure, but I would think that most residents, most users would agree that is a great spot for it. When it comes to like an aquatic center or something, I think that is probably the next move for our city, and I think it should likely happen sooner rather than later, at least the planning for it. I think planning for those types of things need to happen now, so we're not caught off guard. And again, there may be an opportunity there in terms of financing that for us to partner with other organizations like Lakeland College or the school divisions that we have in our community, or even creating a spa for it and making it a destination spot. So you've got a lane pool, but there's also a spa component where there's mineral pools and whatnot that can be utilized, and where we can have buy-in from investors and make it into a destination spot rather than just an amenity kind of enclosed in a structure. In terms of paying for those things, I think this is one of those things where we often think, well, we've got to increase taxes or we got to do cutbacks. And I really believe that there's a third way, and that is creating additional revenue streams for the city. So then we can take some of that tax burden off the people while having the ability to pay for some of these things. And it's easy for me to say that right now. It's like additional revenue streams, right? But what does that mean? So I think, like looking now, there's a recent Your Voice survey that just came out in terms of the municipal landfill and because there are concerns there. What is life expectancy? Is it going to cost us more? There are jurisdictions throughout North America, even closer, Wetaskiwin, that are going to be building waste to energy facilities. So they are redirecting, I believe, up to 90% of their landfill, what would normally go into the landfill, using that, converting that into like a diesel fuel or into energy, generating power with it. So could we then generate our own power and sell that to industrial lots, to our residents? Do we set up as a city of Lloydminster a branch of what we do, becoming a utility provider where we are buying or generating electricity and retailing that to customers? And was like, well, we can't do that. But we've already partnered with 12 other municipalities with the ACE water distribution network. We're getting water or providing, and we've signed on to that. And I don't know the particulars of that, so I may be revealing my ignorance as I keep on opening my mouth.
I don't know it either.
So creating a utilities company where we can, I know Direct Energy, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that name, but a lot of people are frustrated in this community with Direct Energy, a company that's, I don't know where they're based out of, Texas maybe, where all those profits are going there. So can we do that where we become the retailer, to become a competitor in that market, generating a profit, generating a revenue, so that we can pay for things like the pool, for roads, for a women's shelter, for things like that. So that's just one idea. We're sitting on such a so much geological, geographical, and social capital in the city that I think once we create that vision for it, we can bring all those pieces together. Are we in an area where we can utilize, let's say, geothermal energy and produce heat for this swimming pool based on, and that data would be available from Natural Resources Canada, or I'm sure Cenovus would have data on whether or not that is feasible in this area. Could we generate power using solar evacuated tubes? Should we be looking at getting or buying or partnering with Sask Energy for a small modular nuclear reactor or a Generation 4 nuclear reactor, where the economy coming up, one way or another, is going to be electrified, and we're going to need electricity. And I think that is a market that we can tap into to create revenue for the city.
So Saskatchewan's already kind of gotten involved in some of that,
yeah.
But you're saying the city should be an investor.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and just advocate for that and just push for that, and to become I know we talk about running the city like a business, and I mean like running it like a business. It's like we are going to create profit centers, profit streams, take the burden off taxes, and I think it's going to create a certain sense of resiliency. Because when I look at how much we are taxed, and I often think that we are taxed a lot, and a lot of it is due to the federal government. That's where most of our taxes go primarily. And I find it so upside down that the taxes that you and I pay, that taken out of our pocket, and then we have to go back to the federal government, back to the provincial government, and beg them for the money to do good things for our community. That doesn't seem right, does it?
Doesn't seem right to me.
No, it doesn't. And I think if we
But
can...
it's the way it's always been.
It's the way it's always been, and it's a little bit upside down, but I think that's part of my passion, I think, just to creating a vision and creating a community that is resilient, where we can have these additional income streams, where we can say to the federal government, when they say, well, if you have these social programs, which may or may not reflect our values, we'll give you this money. Because I think that's starting to happen. I don't think that's a conspiracy. We can say, you know what, federal government, we're doing just fine because we're generating our own power. We're doing these sorts of activities. We're fine. We're resilient. And working with not just ourselves as a city, but as a region, with other municipalities around us. County of Vermilion River, they've got their own gas utility. It's like, how are they doing it? Can we team up with them? So ideas like that.
Do you believe that the City of Lloydminster Mayor and Council is transparent? What would you do to make them more transparent?
I think they are transparent. I think they're operating within whatever legal obligations they are. And I think the city has done a remarkable job of creating spaces, creating opportunities for the residents to provide feedback to some of their initiatives that they're taking. And I think really what woke me up to this was when the event center started being planned. And I have to admit that I felt that, and maybe I was just late into the game, but it felt like they were asking, pardon me, for opinions after there were already shovels in the ground. And it felt a little bit disingenuous. But maybe I just missed seeing those opportunities to speak to that. So I think we, as council, as a city, we need to be aware of that. But really, if you're living in this community, you need to do your diligence as well and look around, attend the forums, read articles on the website, talk to the councillors. And I think it's a small enough community that you run into your councillor while shopping at Co-op or at Superstore or at Safeway. And it's really a neat place to be. And I think they really have done a great job of being open.
Do you believe that the decisions are made based on the information and recommendations provided by city administration, or do you believe influence from outside parties influence decision-making at the council level? I
would say yes. And because I think that it's a good question. I think that there's a subtext to that question that is attempting to draw out, do I believe in the conspiracy for, are we getting these outside investors from China or from the World Economic Forum? And I would say no, we aren't. But should we have outside investors in our community? Yeah, if they see value in doing, and there are. Like Cenovus, like David Lopez said, they're not a Canadian company. They've got Canadian roots, yes, absolutely. But we have companies in Lloydminster, in Canada, that aren't from Canada. Some of the grain terminals are owned by families in Dubai, and we're happy to take their investment dollars. Or ADM, I believe, is a French-based company. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know either, right? Yeah. But that's not a Lloydminster company. And those people are influencing decisions or speaking to decisions, and they deserve so because they are putting their investment dollars in this community. But when they do that, I believe everything is above board. I don't think that these private dealers deals behind closed doors saying, here's $20 if you let me develop this parcel of land to do this business. I think there's safeguards within that. So,
do you believe the city should invest in public transportation? Why or why not?
I think what we've done so far is great.
Have we done anything, Barry?
Well, I think there have been studies that have been done.
Okay.
And I think that Jim Taylor brought up a very good point, and I think he and I are of the same mind of this, where like expanding the pathways, and I think there's been great improvements in doing that to allow people. So often I would see people just walking down ditches, either along Highway 17 here or Highway
Right on here.
Yeah, and we're making moves, and that is changing, and I would like to see that continue to happen, and improving the roadway networks as well. And I know I'm not answering your question directly here, but I think there's things like expanding 25th Street, which is College Drive. Just where am I looking up? I shouldn't be pointing because I'm sorry. But 25th Street right now, College Drive is a great drive, but it just kind of stops essentially at Highway 17. I think that needs to continue out to 40th Ave. And that's going to help the Saskatchewan side develop more. I think that we need to develop JC Park, and that's going to help that, JC Park, Bud Miller East. And that's also going to help emergency services to get from fire station number 1 to other parts of the community so much faster. It's also going to take the load off of other streets in this, take the load off of 36th Street, take the load off of. So I think that's one practical way of improving mobility within the community. To more directly address that question, I think that we have to be careful in investing in public transportation. I think there's a huge need. I think Border City Connects is doing a very good job, and I think that potentially we may need to be expanded. But I think that we're on the cusp of some significant technological changes when it comes to how we get around in the community. There's so many more scooters, for example, where they've got a scooter garage at Pioneer Lodge now. And to create safe trails for them, safe passages for them. I've seen some of the seniors in our community trying to use sidewalks on their scooters, and then they can't because the sidewalk ends, or driving down a icy street in the middle of winter. And so we need to be aware of that going forward, there's going to be a lot more of that type of transportation, e-bikes and scooters and whatnot, to be building towards that. I think that is going to probably reduce the need for that as technology changes in terms of ride sharing and apps and autonomous vehicles. It sounds like a dream, but that's coming down the road, and those may be solutions to doing that. Public transportation, is it need? For sure it is. So,
not so much the buses and things like that, but there is I know what you're talking about when you say 25th Street. There's a field. You
right.
Run into a field and then you go into residential.
Yeah, exactly.
So it does kind of end there.
Yeah. And so I think just making the city more walkable, more cyclable, that type of thing, doing those ideas. And maybe I'm digressing off that. I think, we've got a great group of candidates running for city council right now. And sometimes I feel I'm the least of them, just because I saw how well prepared so many of them, how well spoken they were at the forum. And it's like people ask me how many council meetings I've been to or listened to. I could have lied, but it's zero. There's people who are better prepared for this position than I am. Lloydminster has, it's almost an easy task because there's so many good people running, so many good people, so many people who are passionate about the community. We can get through the next 4 years very easily with the people who are there. But I would say we need to be looking forward the next 40 years. And I was thinking about this last night, and I've thought about before. With 40 years, that's such a long time to plan out. We don't need to be doing that. You're familiar with the Anthony Henday Drive in Edmonton. We've used it, I'm sure you've used it. It was completed in 2016. The inception for that project started to take shape in 1950s. 66 years before it was completed. 1970s, they started doing land acquisition. They were thinking ahead. There were visionaries thinking ahead. In terms of visionaries as well, I think that even goes to the healthcare. I think back in the 1980s, when Knox Manor and Padua Place and Southridge Estates and Fellowship Village and Pioneer Lodge, when those buildings were built, that was done because of visionaries, because of movers and shakers, not just in Lloydminster, but teamwork with the municipalities around to build those care homes. And when we've got a bigger vision, a bigger sense of that community, looking 40, 60, 80 years ahead, it would be an interesting thing to go to the schools to open up to community and say, hey, kids, what do you think Lloydminster is going to look like 70 years from now? And do sponsor an essay contest or an art contest and start that conversation with the community. Where are we going? You and I will likely be long gone when some of these projects are gone, are taking place. But we need to be thinking more than just the next 4-year election cycle, creating a vision that people can gather around, that create that sense of community, and something that's going to carry us forward, not just to the next generation, but to the generation following that. So my role here, I don't anticipate making huge changes, but if I can tick it half a degree in one direction, in 80 years from now, that's potentially a very significant course change. So
Thank you, Barry.
right, thank you very much.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Michele Charles Gustafson.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
At CK McKean Roofing, they understand what it took to put that roof over your head for your family. With over 20 years of experience under their belt, they strive to show you that with their workmanship and their integrity. Not all roofing companies are created equal, and that's why CK McKean Roofing encourages you to focus on your most important investments, your home and your family. CK McKean Roofing. Roofers do it on top.
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
At Synergy Credit Union, we're more than just a financial institution. We're your partners in every step of your journey. From supporting local businesses to enhancing community life, we're committed to making a difference. Join us in shaping a brighter future. Together, we thrive, because this is Synergy.
Wellings of Lloydminster is an active 55 and over community for those with a busy lifestyle or those that want to start living maintenance-free because of their health, or maybe they just want to get on the go more. 66 units, 2 and 1 bedroom villas that are absolutely gorgeous with a full kitchen, 5 appliances, walk-in showers, and in-suite laundry. And in this busy community, you can get to know your neighbors with a gorgeous clubhouse and even a pickleball court just for residents. Learn more by calling Darlene locally here in Lloydminster, and she'll tell you about their easy leasing. And if you want to ask some questions, she's the best person to answer those questions for you. Wellings of Lloydminster. It's been a long time coming. This style, this type of living has been a long time coming to Lloydminster. It is finally here. It's called Care Freedom Living. Wellings at 780-872-8537. Well, we welcome you back inside the new Lloydminster Nissan, and Michele Charles Gustafson is our final guest in our series of potential council candidates.
I'm the last one.
You're the last one. Yeah,
I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah. We want we're only a week away from actually voting, so
I know.
we wanted to give people a little bit of time.
Advanced polls are already open, and people are already going, but it's really great to be able to have a chit chat and let people understand who the person is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us about yourself and why you decided to run for council.
Yeah, my name is Michele Charles Gustafson. I have been in Lloydminster since 1987. We moved here after a couple stops in early Saskatchewan, Yorkton first, then Regina, and then here. Our family immigrated from the United States, and it was an amazing step. So we've been here since 1987, and I graduated here from the LCHS. I went away to university at Queen's University for business in marketing and business strategy. And the people at my school thought I was crazy to want to come back to the West. First of all, they thought, no. Don't you want to be in Toronto where the big movers and shakers are after business school? Nope. My future husband was here, my family was here, and so I came back to start a business to Lloydminster. And since then, in 2000, I had a business service business. I help businesses put themselves out there, marketing, personal branding, and that business has grown into something of an online consulting business and a coaching business. And I coach people all across Canada, in the US, and some even into Australia. I'm really proud about the work I do. I help people understand how to put themselves in the best light, to understand their competitive advantage as a person or as a business and as a team, and then to attract things to them. And the reason why I want to run for city council is because I see my skills at being able to do that for individuals as a skill set that can work for a community. And I think some of the challenges that we're having as a community is a chance for us to reset who we want to be, understand where our competitive advantage lies, and then sell that. And that helps everything grow. So that's a little bit about me and
why you're running.
Why I'm running, yeah.
Are you a dual citizen? Like, do you have American? Could you have voted in last night's?
That's a really personal question, first of all, but I will answer it. I was a dual citizen up until about 2014.
Oh, you have to, that's something you got to keep up.
You have to keep up.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, and I actually relinquished my U.S. citizenship. I am a full Canadian, and you guys, I am so proud to be a Canadian.
I wondered about that because there was a question the other night at the forum about voting for, and I know a lot of people thought it was offside. So
I did not answer that question on purpose. First of all, I think that party politics and religion are so personal to a person. It is their compass. It sets their values. And unfortunately, in times like these, it has been used to separate people. And I'm a person who looks at even a role as city councillor as a steward for all the people in this community. I don't intend to separate myself from anyone who lives in any part of the city, any idealistic things. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm here for. And so I refuse to answer that question, and I still stand on it. But I will share with you that the idea of voting in Canada is so central to who I am, because moving from the US and having US parents, there was a time in 1965 my parents could not vote. They did not have a vote. That means they did not have an idea of their future. And for me to be able to be in Canada, have come to Canada from a program that encouraged immigration to get skills to come to Canada, and then to be able to put myself forward to say, I have skills that could help build community, and people are able to vote. Like, it's a huge deal for me. Like, I could go on forever about that. It's a huge deal.
It's always interesting to me when I travel to the United States, and I'll be perfectly honest, I find them behind on a lot of stuff. Like, I find sometimes their technology is behind. Like we had tap debit way before. Like, I remember going down to Phoenix and using my credit card, and they got out the old clunky machine. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they're still right. Like, I'm amazed at how far they're behind on some. You'll be amazed. They're recycling. Yeah. That's another thing. We recycle like crazy here. They don't recycle in the States. They don't. Like, I'm always amazed at how much I really believe that they're behind a lot of stuff.
I am so proud to be Canadian. We have so many innovations. We do have less people, which, I mean, there's a lot in organizing all the things, but I just think we have, I don't know, we have such a forward-looking view, and I'm happy about that, and I'm happy to be part of the process.
How can council foster economic growth? Where do you see areas of success, and what would you do to attract more diverse businesses to our community?
I think council's role in economic development is to be an advocate and a connector. I think that creating an environment where businesses want to come to Lloydminster is a huge part. So the idea of making it welcoming for businesses to come. So whether it's a small business or a big business, like you got $900 million Covenant Energy, that's a big industry which can add to the base, but also welcoming for small businesses too, making the environment feel seamless, meaning, is it easy to start? Like, I come from a customer service background, okay? So it is a customer experience background, meaning, is it easy for the customer to engage with the business? And for me, when I think about economic development in the city, welcoming environment means come, we're open for business. Seamless environment means this is easy for me to do. I can set up, I can get my permits together, I can make this thing happen. And then it's also supporting business. So once it's here, does it have resources in order to thrive? Things like working with the Chamber of Commerce, working with policies that are put forward to make sure that there is ease of movement of business in the city. The Chamber of Commerce sandwich gate, being able to serve sandwiches across the border, where the Chamber was involved in helping that happen, that is what I mean by seamless. And so I think making sure that the city has their ear to the ground on those three pieces, welcoming, seamless, and supportive, is huge. And then I think we have to be our own best salesperson. And I think we do a good job already in terms of the small business that we have. Look at the Chamber of Commerce and the excellence that has happened in there, and the number of nominees even this year was more than ever before. There are good things here as successes. And I think we become our own best salesperson, and I think the city helps with that.
When you say welcoming, Michelle, I said this to Russell this morning too. I find the perception of welcoming businesses into our city may be changing. And what I mean by that is, several years ago when Ken Baker was running for mayor, he mentioned at a forum that Costco wanted to come in, but they want the land for free. He said that out loud. There was a noticeable gasp from the audience. Now I find there's people going, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Do you think we've opened it up that much?
I don't.
Do you think we've changed things that much?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't comment on what I think he thought he meant. But I think in terms of welcoming, what I would say is that I think we need to use our local partnerships in economic development with, say, a chamber, but also with developers to understand who is seeing the customer who thinks they want to come here. I think we have to link arms some. And I don't know if it is, but not be adversarial or in our silos about who's getting the thing to come here. I think we need a roundtable approach, an open approach about who's looking, who's the customer, what are they looking for, what sells our community in the best light. I have a few people that I had spoken to through this campaign process who shared that large industry and developers aren't just looking for the land. They're looking for a community. They're looking for it to feel good for the thousands of jobs that they bring here. And I think that's a collaborative approach. It's not just who gets the land and how much they pay. It is, are we creating an environment that they want to bring their people here? And that takes more than just selling a land or selling a developer. It is who is around the table that we go, what are the things that make us better than other communities? How can we make a concerted approach around our different areas and then sell it back to that person? And I think if we are collaborative in that approach, our pitch looks really, really good.
Homelessness was listed as a big concern by residents as we headed into the provincial election. We had Colleen Young on the show. She said she heard that the most when she knocked on doors. What recommendations would you make to help solve the issue?
I need everyone to all take a collective deep breath on this one, because this is hard. And I know this question was coming and you've asked it to everyone. And I think there are tactile things that you say to this question, and then there's heart pieces. I see the homeless, unhoused, challenge as a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that has multiple parts that all have to get clicked together. I think the role of the city is the role of the puzzle clicker. So if I may draw the picture of the puzzle, you've got the piece around crime that's happening, that happens because of it. You've got the fact that there's no, or low affordable housing. You've got mental health. You've got, addiction support. You've got community services. All of these pieces have to get clicked together. And I don't have the answer. And I think anyone who says the answer is X, Y, Z is oversimplifying the problem. And I think I've said that before. This is a collaborative approach. And I think the city's job is to be a connector of all the pieces, of the social pieces, of the health pieces, and of the crime pieces. And then there's the heart piece for me, where the thing I would not want to see is our city have a tone of otherism for people. And what I mean by that is when you say something like ship them off, that implies a dehumanization of people. And while the problem is difficult, I don't want us to lose our humanity as a community. While there are things to fix and things to protect and a need to feel safe, I don't want us to dehumanize in the process. I have been a person who has felt othered, dehumanized, or unwanted. And it's not a wonderful place to be. And even people who are trying their very best to get to a place in their life where they can be a productive member, to grow, to change, even they feel othered, even in the recovery. So I want us to be careful about saying things like the homeless problem. Be careful when you use that language. People are not problems. There are policies that are challenging. There are parts of this puzzle that need to get connected. But please, 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 Lloydminster, hear me. These are people. And we need to keep the people in the picture of that puzzle.
You mentioned crime. Along with the homelessness, crime is a huge concern for residents right across Alberta and Saskatchewan. How do you think council can develop and maintain a safe and viable community for everyone?
Safety is one of our basic needs. So I shared this before. My background is in marketing psychology and consumer behavior. And one of the main pieces of that, and deciding how people buy what they buy, is understanding basic needs. So the first is basic, clothing, food. But the second level up is safety, that feeling that you are secure. And I think if we want things like economic development and bring the community together, that is a major piece to address, because without safety, you don't have anything. Without safety, you don't want to open your business. Without safety, you don't want to go outside. Without safety, you don't connect to others. So I think there have been some strides that have happened in the last even few weeks. Staff Sergeant Nut Brown spoke about having the GIS unit more present in areas in our community that need it. That's amazing. People having a sense of presence. Well, we all know what happens when you see like the RCMP sitting on the side of the highway when you're speeding a little bit. We know what happens when there's presence. Presence is important. So that's one thing that's amazing. The second thing is, if you listen to the draft budget, there's budgeted 2 new RCMP members. That helps too. The problem, the challenge, is being chipped away at. I think sometimes though, even when the problem is being chipped away at, that doesn't help someone who's in the situation go, I still don't feel safe. I also think what's amazing about what's happening in the east side of our community is that coming together. I was speaking to a lady at the forum, after the forum, and I said, you know what I think is amazing? The idea that community collective is forming. because community collective creates a larger voice. And I would say, as a recommendation, there's no reason why we wouldn't have community collectives across the city. Why just that area? Because I live in College Park, and I went out for my Sunday walk, and I didn't feel safe on my Sunday walk in College Park. So for me, safety is a community neighborhood thing. And I think there's an idea about pulling together neighborhoods that could be really, really important. I also think that in the business community, there are ways to be able to pull together too. I know that Community Futures and also Staff Sergeant Nut Brown were talking about doing some business walks and understanding what businesses need, and doing some of the things that deter crime. In my mind, I think of like lights, locks, video, voice. Lights around the property, locks on your doors, video to see what you can't see, and the voice is to pick up the phone when something's going on so that we have that volume of calls about what's going on. That helps in advocacy. So I think crime is a community approach, and I think the city can be, again, a connector of all those pieces, putting those together.
Yeah, we had Don Larry on the program. I don't know if you saw it or not, for Citizens on Patrol.
Okay, yeah.
And he mentioned the Citizens on Patrol actually have a service where they go check doors.
Yeah.
And he was amazed at how many doors you'll find at a business where, just like we have a ton of doors here, for example, that one gets forgotten.
Yes,
Like
it's funny that you mentioned American, because even though I'm full Canadian, I grew up with American parents who lived in America. And there's one thing about us as American cities. My grandma grew up or lived in a really rough spot in New York City, and when we went to visit her, you get your street smart on. You lock your stuff, you lock your doors, you always have a sense of what's around you, and not because you're scared, but because you're empowering yourself. And I think that's one message about feeling good and making yourself feel safe. I saw that the RCMP was putting on a women's self-defense course. That is amazing.
Sold out.
And I know, sold out, couldn't get in. I tried to get myself and my daughter in because my mom made me do self-defense before I went to university. Every woman needs that. First of all, I mean, every person, but like, that is a sense of personal safety, personal empowerment. And when I was speaking to the lady at the forum, she said, well, why do we even need to do that? It's like, it has nothing to do with the outside world. It has to do with your own personal confidence to understand that you can keep yourself safe if needed. And so I would hope, if the RCMP is listening, please open it up, make it bigger, put it in a gym. We all want to go.
Well, healthcare is a provincial responsibility. What role do you see council playing in order to ensure residents are getting the best care possible closer to home?
Yeah, this is one that I used, I shared at the forum, that I just go by my mom. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think as Lloydminster residents, it has been a long time coming that we have had healthcare concerns. And I think we just need to get a little louder. I think we need to become a nuisance. And I think there's an opportunity now that the Saskatchewan government has been formed. We are, 7 days in, and we can get squeaky now and have a nice long runway of being able to advocate for ourselves. I think it is important that we use our community groups like Concerned Citizens for Seniors, that we use the bi-provincial advisory councils and our district advisory councils. I think we use those to make the voice louder. I think any way we can use to make the voice louder. I don't know if you've seen that movie, Shawshank Redemption.
Only about 25 times.
I know, isn't it the best? I know, it is like cult in our family, Shawshank.
I saw it in the theater.
Me too.
Yeah.
Remember when Andy Dufresne wanted books for the library?
He wrote how many letters?
He wrote a letter every
day.
single day until the government said, get off my list. I'm not saying we have to be Andy Dufresne, but I'm saying that we need to be a nuisance. And if I remember back to my days of being a chamber president, anywhere I went, people did not understand Lloydminster's bi-provincial. They didn't get it. People don't get it. And so we are forever, it is part of our job to remind people that we are different and that we have needs and that I need you to hear me.
Many user groups of the BioClean Aquatic Center wish they had more accessibility to pool time and increased lanes and length. We're using a temporary space right now for the museum. We've moved the library to the Lloyd Mall, and a new event center is planned for 2025 to open. What do you see as the next major recreational facility needed for our community, and can we pay for this without raising taxes?
Yeah, this is a hard one. So this one I'm going to tell a story about my father-in-law who has a little tiny, okay, forgive me because I don't know everything, but he has this little tiny Lund boat that he uses for fishing when we go to Nipawin in the summers, and it has that small motor, right? And it fits us, but we're like, the Lund boat. And then you get to Nipawin and you see some of these river boats out here for the fishing competitions, and they have like the huge motor on the back with the little jumper motor too, and the sparkly paint. So in my mind, we really want the sparkly Lund, like everybody does, the one that rips down the river and comes back. But I think for me, if I look at our situation, I look at the budget, I look at what we've committed to, I think we're okay with the Lund, just the little fishing boat for now. That doesn't mean that you don't repurpose or reinvent how you use that small boat. I think our community is growing in how it defines leisure. I think we have lots of community who love basketball, who love biking. And I think there's a way to be able to look at the facilities we have, maybe repurpose them in some of those other recreational or leisure ideas without buying the sparkly big Lund. I think we have enough sparkle. I think we need to think about reinventing and repurposing. So whether that means putting basketball floors in at a facility that already exists, or I'm not totally sure exactly of the idea, but I think we need to repurpose. I think we need to stay in the small boat for now.
So nothing major anytime soon.
I don't think major. I think we need to just kind of cool our jets, breathe, relax, see where we're at, and try to work with what we've got.
Do you believe that the City of Lloydminster Mayor and Council is transparent? What would you do to make them more transparent?
I do think they're transparent. That being said, because I come from a customer service background and training in how people see business, understand as a customer, I think when you're in the business, a lot of times what happens is you forget how your customer perceives you. And then you kind of can't see the forest for the trees. So you think you're transparent. It's like, I have a website and I have all the things uploaded and I do all the things. And so that you can go see all the things. The problem is that the customer perceives something different. So if it's difficult to access information, or it feels like it's against the grain to access information, or if the information is difficult for me to digest, or if the information seems too fast coming at me and I can't absorb it, then it feels like it's intransparent. And so I actually think there are ways that as a city, we could improve sharing information, even if we already do it. So first of all, I think that the packages that get sent for City Council, I think they come out too close to the meeting. There's no way a resident is going to be able to read, understand, and absorb in 3 days 700 pages of something. I understand that packages get thick because we're talking about stormwater and sewer and pipes and all sorts of reports from all the different things in administration. But I think that idea of complicated matter in a short amount of time does people a disservice. I would love to see that package come out the Wednesday before the meeting. Give me a minute. Give me a minute to absorb. The second thing I think that I heard at one of the meetings that got quite heated was that I really understood that people didn't feel heard, was the idea of inserts inside the water bills of things that are going on in the city. Perfect. You're opening it up anyway. There it is. Little list of things going on, or pop-ups on the website after you pay your bill. That is an easy fix, but also a super communicative action that says we really do want to understand. And that is the thing that communicates transparency. It's an action, right? I think that, so packages, pop-ups, I think maybe personality-wise, I think maybe there's a way for the city to be able to share some of the things that are going on, whether it's through social media, but like with a personality, like someone who can explain it to me in plain language. I was doing my business walks and the one gentleman, I kind of laughed. He said, "Just explain it to me in redneck English." That's what he said to me. And I kind of burst out laughing. I'm like, I'm going to write that down in my little book. I have this little book that I write things in. I said, I'm going to write that down. Is it okay if I write that down? I'll write that down. But what he means by that, the customer just told you. What he means by that is it's too complicated. I don't understand. And so giving people time to digest, language they can understand, and a few actions, I think would just go a long way to sharing that you understand you need a minute and that we are trying our best to be transparent.
Do you believe that decisions are made based on the information and recommendation provided by city administration? Or do you believe influence from outside parties does influence decision-making at city council level?
I actually didn't understand the context of this question. I think it's trying to go somewhere that I'm not going to go. I think it's leading. I think council uses what they've got to make decisions that they have to. So at the forum, I had my little scale. I shared with the people that after I decided to run for council, I bought a little tiny miniature scale, like the scales of justice. And it was there to remind me that through this process and whatever happens and the chips fall where they may, that I see the job as a counselor as a steward, and a steward is there to balance things. On that scale, they're balancing money, so taxpayer money, time, so what do we have to do with that money over time? What are our responsibilities? But also on the other side, quality of life, like what makes this place attractive, what makes people want to stay, and the relationships around creating the whole thing. So whether that's MLAs and other things and residents. And I think that at the table, those 6 people sit and try to balance those scales. I think they try. And so they use whatever information comes. I think they ask whatever questions are in their capacity to ask. And I think they do the best job they can. And so I think people will always have an idea of whether that's good enough. But unless you sit in that chair, I don't think any of us really understand the depth, the breadth, and the difficulty of balancing those scales.
Do you believe this city should invest in public transportation? Why or why not?
This goes back to my Lund boat analogy. I would love to see public transportation, and I think, the city has spoken in that the public wants it. I think we have a number of different options. I read that master plan. I think we have a number of different options in it. I think I'm still at a point to go, I think we need to stay in the small boat for now. I'm not saying we don't look at a medium-sized boat in the very near future, but I think there needs to be more work on looking at what the scenario actually looks like. I think there's maybe some sort of hybrid that could happen that would be in the middle boat. Maybe a connection, a collaboration with like Border City Connects, or some of using some of what we have already without going full on sparkly boat. Okay. And I think it's a natural next step for the community, but I hesitate to say yes now when we do have a lot of infrastructure projects to do. There's a lot in that budget that has to get done that involves basic needs. When I talked about basic needs, remember before, the base of the triangle, water, like sewer, like pipes, like roads. These things are basic, and those have to get done first before we start adding sparkles and big engines and things like that.
So not at this time.
I think I said that at the forum, not at this time.
Last time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Is that all?
That's all. That's all the questions that I have for you. And that wraps up our time with the prospective city council candidates. So 1 week today, it's in your hands. You can go out and vote. And we remind you that tomorrow on the program, Jonathan Torreson will be here, an outgoing council member, and he'll look at everything from what's been said on my program, what's been said on the Sean Newman program, what's been said in the newspaper, what's been said at various things. He's been keeping track, and so tomorrow for him is kind of a chance to, I wouldn't say set the record straight, but kind of a rebuttal on some of what has been said, and we're looking forward to that tomorrow. It starts at 10 a.m. right here from the new Lloydminster Nissan. I hope to see you tonight at Feastival.